All right, so thank you all again for being here today. We've got a really cool thing we want to talk to you about today. So it's always fantastic to hear about customer stories, right? What our customers are doing, what's happening out there in industry. So today on stage, we are joined by Cognite, Nita from Cognite, and we'll get into some individual introductions here shortly. We also have Christian, who's joining us from Salesforce, and then our very own Tom McGeehan, who is our Director of Revenue Cloud Architecture here at Uptima. My name is Alex Bell. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Uptima. I've been here for about 4 years. I focus very heavily on revenue operations and the revenue space in the Salesforce ecosystem. We're not here to talk about me, so I'm going to move on from that. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is hand over to our panelists today. So this is very much going to be kind of a question and answer session. We will ask for some feedback. There will be time for questions at the end. If you have any, I just ask that you hold on to them until then. So we're going to talk today about the Cognite story. We're also going to talk to you a bit about some of the best practices of a Revenue Cloud, in this instance, plus Logic.io. It's a very exciting project. But some of the best practices, the Achilles heels, things you really want to look out for when you're embarking on a Revenue Cloud journey. So we'll be hearing from our two panelist experts here on those items. All right, so there we go. All right, so let's just get into it. So Nita, I'm going to hand over to you. We'd love to hear about who you are. She's joining us from Israel, so you're probably dealing with both the Dreamforce exhaustion and jet lag, so way to be a trooper.
That's right. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
That's strange. Hi everybody. Very nice to be here. I'm Nita Zirarim. I work for Cognite for the last almost 15 years as a business application manager, which means the CRM application is really part of the domains that I'm responsible for. During this entire years, I really had the chance to execute a project, if I'll stay now in the area of the CRM, when we had Oracle and Microsoft Dynamics, and really just 2 years ago, we started our journey with Salesforce. So later on, we will continue, and I will elaborate, of course, on that experience.
Yes, and thank you, Nita, and thank you for making the effort to be here and be with us today. All right, Christian.
Hey everyone, Christian Tooley from Salesforce. So I've been in the ecosystem, the Salesforce ecosystem, for around 10 to 12 years. Mostly spent that time in the field helping our customers be successful, actually hands-on building solutions for our customers, both at medium scale, large enterprise scale. And during that time, I like to say that I was able to transform with the platform as it was being built. Initially when I started, it was a very small niche platform focused on sales and service. And as we've grown, we've acquired all these products, Revenue Cloud, Commerce, all of these different pieces. And I've kind of watched the house being built, I like to say. So I come from a very technical background. I've got a technical background on Commerce, Revenue Cloud, Service Cloud that we'll talk about a little bit here today. But my main job right now at Salesforce is to ensure that our customers are successful with the products, and I mostly get involved in the more complicated pieces of those aspects.
Fantastic. All right, and Tom.
Hi all. My name is Tom McGeehan. I'm our Director of Revenue Cloud Architecture here at Uptima. Really just a fancy way of saying I own all of our best practices and standards when it comes to CPQ implementations. I've been with Uptima for just about 5 years now, and I've been in the Salesforce space for going on 10 years, so dating myself a little bit, but I've been working with CPQ since it was called Steelbrick. And really saw the value, early in my career of building that true quote-to-cash system out of Salesforce and using the ERP for what it's meant to be used for, which is enterprise resource planning, and not as a kind of catch-all for everything that's coming out of a CRM system. I'm really excited to talk to you guys today and just kind of share some of the lessons and best practices that I've learned over the last decade.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so just to give you a quick preview of what we're going to be discussing today. So why would you ever do a Revenue Cloud implementation? We'll make sure that is surfaced. I mentioned to you that we're going to talk a little bit about some of the best practices, the Achilles heels, the pitfalls, the things that you really want to avoid when you're heading into a Revenue Cloud implementation. But also how you prepare for one of them. And what's really interesting about the Cognite perspective is that logic.io was used as is being used as the configurator, so replacing the C of the P and the Q. So Cognite is logic.io is sitting in the front for the Cognite solution. We'll also talk about some outcomes. Now, I will preface this by saying that the Cognite project is still in flight, so we're set to wrap up here shortly. But already I think that we have some really good telltales of what some of those outcomes are anticipated to be, and also how we're going to measure the success of the project. And we'll wrap up. We'll give you some time for some Q&A if you have anything that you want to ask of Nita or any of the panelists here. All right, so I will say we'll get to the Cognite perspective and we'll hear about Cognite as a company, but Nita, just before we head into this, can you please just tell the room today what it is that Cognite does?
Yes, so Cognite is actually have a lot of solution related to the investigative analytic software. This is really give the customer, actually most of the customer are government and law enforcement. When I'm thinking of it, it's AI, but it's actionable intelligence and not artificial intelligence, because it gives a tool for those customers to be able to dedicate threats and do the investigation and the insight from that, all the data that capture.
Yeah, that's a very, very cool business. All right, so Christian, I just want to hand over to you here really quickly.
Sure.
So you've been working in this space for a very long time. You know, you mentioned that you really are a technical expert, and I'm sure that you've been involved in a tremendous amount of projects as well as product development at Salesforce. So can you tell us why an organization might embark on a Revenue Cloud journey?
Absolutely. So the number one reason is to standardize and streamline the overall sales process. As many of you guys know, B2B companies function in multiple different ways when they sell to each other, to their customers. And CPQ is pretty much a repeatable way to go to market, to quote a process, to calculate margin and profit, and then be able to move the action, which is the sale, to the ERP in a very streamlined way. So it's probably one of our top selling products, specifically in the B2B and enterprise space, because when these companies graduate from mid-market over to enterprise, or maybe they're already in the enterprise and they're not doing very well with standardizing their sales process, being able to calculate margin, being able to see what's in the pipeline, they will typically use this process as a way to graduate to the next level, or be able to calculate a lot of those factors that I just mentioned.
Yeah, fantastic. So if you're a company who's looking to do a Revenue Cloud implementation, at what point in a company's scale would you recommend that they think about standardizing their processes?
That's a good. Basically, when you get up to the mid-market level,
Yeah.
I think you should absolutely be looking at it. There comes a point in time where you lose the ability to track revenue, and you're also spending way more time calculating pipeline, calculating like where are my quotes or opportunities, what's out there, and then specifically too when you're in, again for that mid-market or even the startup, when you're in year 2 and year 3 and you're really approaching that renewal cycle, that renewal phase, that's pretty crucial, because the startups really struggle when it comes to being able to renew any sort of contract, right? So on the enterprise side, anytime you're having problem calculating the overall cost that goes into selling a deal and how much you're actually getting out of that deal, and then how long it's staying within a certain stage, right? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So the interesting point that you just touched on there in your last sentence was how long it's spending in each stage. So if you spend any time working in a selling motion, you know very quickly that something that kills all deals is time, right? The longer we spend in each stage, the longer that we spend communicating with our prospects and our customers, the less likely it is for us to convert. So what I see in a lot of the projects that I work in, or the customers that I work with, is one of the key metrics that comes out of a Revenue Cloud implementation is, what is my time to market for my quoting processes, right? How timely am I able to renew, right? Can I place auto renewals in place? Am I making my deals intelligently legible by my customers, right? We want to make sure that what we're putting out to market is also very clear.
Right.
So thank you for your perspective on that. I just wanted to add that little tidbit.
And then one other piece
Yes.
I'll add. This is probably where the majority of our customers are getting involved is, your question was, when should I look at CPQ? When you have a very complex amount of products that you sell to a single customer.
Yep.
And also if you have a very large set of products that you sell to a customer. So.
Very good. All right, so Tom and I work together a lot in our day-to-day business, and I wanted to make sure that Tom spent some time with us today because one of the things that he does exceptionally well is walk through the best practice approach to a Revenue Cloud implementation. And I just want to preface my question with the fact that Revenue Cloud is one of the hardest clouds to deploy on platform. We are working through an organization's behaviors that really impact both top and bottom line, right? This is a very personal thing to an organization to think that, we're creating a Rolodex in our selling motion. It would be wildly incorrect. And the data that we're using on the outside of Revenue Cloud implementation is wildly impactful to many different business units and parts of those organizations. So Tom, just across like planning and pre-work, you're in the implementation now, you're post-implementation. Can you tell the room how you guide our customers in best practice when it comes to Revenue Cloud implementations?
Yeah, absolutely. So really the number one, priority when you come into a Rev Cloud implementation as an organization is you need to be open to change. I think early in my career, like a lot of consultants, I would go and meet with people and I would gather their requirements and I would think, okay, these people are looking to me to deliver these requirements and put them into CPQ. And I would never really push back and I would never really advocate for business transformation within the organization. And then we would end up with a subpar implementation, right? As I went through my career, I realized more and more that the goal is to fit the process to the tool and not necessarily to try to fit the tool to the process. I see a lot of clients sometimes come in, hey, this is the list of requirements that I have, go off and solve these. And I know a couple people in Uptima will chuckle when I say this because there's always a requirement behind the requirement, right? That's kind of my slogan. And so like a 2-year-old, if you have a 2-year-old at home, they're always asking why, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something that I ask every organization when we begin, I'm going to ask you why a lot. And that's not to put anybody on their back foot or to make anyone defensive, but that's to try to understand, why is this requirement being surfaced that may not exactly fit best practice, right? So when we step into a Revenue Cloud implementation, we need to think about what is our sales motion, right? Do we pick products out of a catalog? Do we answer questions about what we're trying to sell? Right? How do we price things, right? What kind of information do we need to gather? We need to understand these things as we begin the implementation. And we need to think about, how do we kind of cut out the inefficiencies that are occurring in the organization? If we kind of take the current process and we bring it into CPQ, the challenges that you face today are going to be the challenges that you face tomorrow. So really, having that openness to change management and thinking about, how do we kind of align with the way that our competitors are selling? How do we align with the way that the rest of the industry is behaving when it comes to their selling motion? When you're in the implementation itself, things are going to move really, really quickly, right? Rev Cloud is one of the hardest clouds to implement. It truly is. But I think it's less, this is like technically really hard, right? You're not sitting here at a coding terminal writing like pages and pages of code. What it really is you've got a lot of people who are involved here, right? From even marketing in terms of how we begin a sales process to the sales team themselves. And no offense to anyone in sales in here, but sales can be very resistant to change, right? They want to sell. They do not want to be bogged down with unnecessary admin-like activities. And so really kind of understanding how do we hit that Goldilocks like sweet spot between enabling the sales team, but also ensuring that we have a frictionless interaction with our customer. I met with a prospect last night at our happy hour, and she said, Tom, we're destroying our company's credibility because we cannot correctly invoice our customers. And we're promising them all these amazing complex products that we sell, and then they get an invoice and it's wrong, and it's ruining our credibility. And so having those guardrails, having the correct approvals and validations in place to say, what I have in Salesforce is what the customer signed is what's going to the invoice. At the end of the day, that's really what we're trying to achieve here, right? If we don't have that correct, then everything that we just did was kind of a waste. Post-implementation, we really want to be looking at metrics and KPIs that the implementation is now driving, right? So not only, hey, have we reduced our time to sell? Have we reduced our cycle? But what type of new information, business intelligence can we surface out of Salesforce now that we have all of this all of this information and process being driven directly out of the sales system? So, I could go on and on for hours about best practices on implementation, but at a high level, that's what we look for.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that when you hear the words best practice, it can kind of sound cliche, right? We talk about best practice, but you hear it all the time. Working with a partner who will not only knows what those best practices are, but will hold stewardship to those practices is really important. It is too often that we'll go into an implementation cycle, and we've talked a lot about this in the pre-sale cycle. We've made agreement to some of these best practices, even in the statement of work, right? We've made it very clear. And when you get there to implement or to embrace those best practices requires an effort and change. So I really like your comment around there has to be an openness to change. Like I said, Revenue Cloud really addresses behavior modification. It does. You're going to fundamentally kind of change the day-to-day of some of these folks. And you're also going to proliferate massively useful data. So in adoption, it's not just a mechanism of going and clicking through the system. It's also how do we use now the data that we're exposing through this system. And we'll talk about this in some later sessions today about what that data really means to several offices inside of an organization. So thank you for that, Tom. That was very helpful. All right. So you said you're going to ask why a lot. There's a lot of whys. And Christian, feel free to pop in here as well. But Tom, what are some of those key questions that you're asking across, okay, what are you selling? Who are you selling it to? How much are you selling it for? Like, how are you really drilling down into some of those requirements as it relates to the best practice implementation methodologies?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at, what we're selling, what we're really trying to drive at here is, how do we rationalize this product catalog in a way that makes sense for the sales reps, right? We also kind of have to understand who our audience is, right? Sometimes I'll work with clients who say, Tom, I am hiring people straight out of college, right? I cannot make an assumption that they have large amounts of tribal knowledge and an understanding of my entire catalog. This needs to be very foolproof. Other times we'll work with clients where they'll say, you know what, we've got guys who have been doing this 20, 30 years, right? I don't need to necessarily drive them into a guided selling like experience. I can kind of expose things and leave it a little bit more open. So one of the first things I try to understand, not only, what are you selling, but who's selling it, right? What does that kind of look like today? And how do I kind of take 20 products and turn it into one? Right? That's a really important aspect of a Revenue Cloud implementation. It's just trying to simplify things and drive things through more of an attribute model instead of just, here's a list of 50,000 products, like enjoy, searching through to try to find the one that's going to meet your client's needs, right? So we want to make sure that we're asking the right questions and understanding, how does the client kind of go through the buying process in terms of, this is the way that I think about navigating a catalog, or this is the way I think about answering questions that are related to the quote that I'm trying to put together. When we get to, who are you selling it to, this, and it's been really interesting because I think early in my career, this wasn't a question that I really thought of a lot. I was like, you're an inside sales team and you're selling B2B. And that was kind of what we saw time and time again in the marketplace. I would say in the last 2 to 3 years, things have really changed where there's a much greater emphasis on e-commerce and self-service. So if you guys were here yesterday, we had our panel, and I think that was just a recurring theme. People want that Amazon experience, right? We've all gotten really addicted to the idea that I can look at something, press a button, and 2 days later it shows up, and it's very frictionless, right? I don't really think about it, right? Unless something goes wrong, and then, yeah, I'm upset with Amazon. But typically we're starting to see we want to sell through e-commerce. We want to do omni-channel. We may have an inside sales team that needs to step in, but really having that understanding of like, is this partner? Is this distributors? What does that kind of look like? And then finally we get to, how are you pricing this, right? I think a lot of times, we think about pricing, and I wish it was as simple as the Amazon model, right? Where it's okay, this thing costs $50. But the reality is pricing can be very, very complicated for clients, right? There's a lot of attributes, there's a lot of different permutations of a single price for a product. It's not product A costs $1,000. There might be 50, 60 different variables that go in to determining the output price there. And so really just getting an understanding, I think one of the first things I'll ask a customer when it gets to pricing is like, tell me how you figure out the price that you start with, and then tell me the permutations and the manipulations that goes through to get to the end, right? It's like a story. Like first I leave the house, then I stop by the store, then I drop my kids off at school, then I'm at work, right? And that's kind of how pricing, flows through that waterfall as well. So, it's really a matter of, not letting yourself get bogged down in like the technical, like what is this tool, how does it operate, and really just taking a higher look at, how do we kind of streamline the efficiencies of our sales process.
So if I can add in some color here, I want to just double click on the reason why we ask these questions and these questions are asked. Without a doubt, and I've been through hundreds of implementations from pre, during, post, right, and all sorts of previous lives. The number one piece right there, the questions, dictate whether you succeed or you fail. Absolutely, right? So the reason that folks like Uptima will ask these questions is to help honestly drive transformation and make sure that you're successful in the product, but also to make sure that you can easily scale to the other phases that Tom mentioned, being able to use the reorder process, unifying the rest of the pieces inside CPQ with the rest of your platform. Right? CPQ is, very important. Revenue Cloud is obviously very important, but it exists within the entire context of the rest of your business. You're probably using Service Cloud for interacting with cases. You're probably using, Sales Cloud, right? Maybe now you're trying to utilize AI, right? So asking the right questions helps define your future path, right? For the immediate, being able to harmonize and utilize CPQ in its best practice, but also being able to utilize the rest of the different products that we offer, because if you don't get the questions right and you don't get the foundation right, it's just like building a house. You're going to have to come back in, do some more construction work, right, and hopefully get it right the second time. So asking the questions, number one, asking the right questions will 100% dictate success or failure.
Yeah, and I think that's a good tell when you're working with a partner or when you're evaluating a partner. Are they asking you those questions very early on in your introduction to them? Are we really starting to drill down even before a contract is signed? Are we really drilling down into some of these key critical items? All right, thank you guys. This is just a breadth of thought leadership here on this stage. Okay, so Nita.
I'm here.
Yes, and I just want to say, so Nita and I were having a quick conversation this morning. We just touched base briefly before we sat down, and I think all three of us have said this, that Revenue Cloud is hard. Like, it's really hard, right? And now we pair another ISV partner with it on the Logic.io side of things. And I think what Nita is now learning is that this is indeed hard. So we're going to talk about some of that because it's important to prepare for these implementations. I'll always tell you as well with Revenue Cloud, like what you put in, you'll get out. The effort is short term, right? Those difficult things that we go through are very short term. On the outside, when we focus on the outcomes, it's all worth that bit of pain. We've been through so many implementations with so many customers. And when we come through to the outside and they've got these really nice engines now running, they're like, oh, it was all worth it. So I promise you, she's not live yet, but I promise you it'll be worth it. Okay, so we ran through a bit about Cognite, maybe just a couple of other things. So there are about 1,500 employees at this point, operating in over 100 countries, is that right?
Right.
Where do you do the majority of your business? Which country are you doing the majority of your business?
Well, it depends really on their product. There are products that sells more in America, others in the...
Okay, awesome. And you're based in your Tel Aviv office, correct?
Yes, it's Herzliya, just near Tel Aviv, but yes, we are based there. There are additional 5 R&D centers and offices worldwide, and it's actually growing.
Yeah.
We had 2 years ago like a spin from Variant company.
Mm-hmm.
And now all the security division all the solution related to the investigative software are really independent, and we're growing. And this is also one of the reasons that it was obvious
Yes.
that, of course, we will get also to the Revenue Cloud.
Yes. So Israel is very near and dear to our heart. We have a delivery center, as you know, in Israel. Uptima was actually founded in Israel and made its way over to its U.S. base in about 2010. So I need to get to Tel Aviv. I hear the food is absolutely outstanding. And if you know
also
me,
the food, and you
yes,
must come. But
you know me, all I like is food. It's the only thing that matters. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about why Cognite embarked on this journey, right? So you had some goals in leveraging Logic.io as well as Revenue Cloud. So let's just talk about some of those. And for those of you who've heard Revenue Cloud talk, some of this is going to be normal, but I'm just going to ask that Nita elaborate.
yeah, I will start, if you mind, just earlier to the Revenue Cloud, just talking even to the point where we understand, because I mentioned before, we started like 2 years ago with decided to go to Salesforce. Before that, we were in the stage, the company actually, that the entire CRM cycle processes were scattered around different platforms, whether it's Microsoft Dynamics, whether it was old Oracle teleservice, the one that knows, really, really old. Of course, Excel, email, and so on. So it was really a matter how just a few days ago when the tennis championship, Coco, just they mentioned that it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when. So it was obvious that the first thing that we'll need to do is really replace with a completely CRM platform that will capture the entire processes and modules. And we started really to look on the customer centricity and how we will be able to get to the 360 view of the customer by really understanding our pre-sale to the post-sale and then support. And we started, even though it's a little bit contradict to the flow, with the service module. We went live a year ago. It was November, actually, 2022. And once we started, it was a good thing, even though it was even more harder to start with the end of the process. But it made the organization pretty much clear that using really Salesforce will get the company to the next level. And in terms of revenue, it was a completely decided and agree that the company, the organization must get to this project that, unfortunately, in the last 5 years, there was 2 attempts to execute and to implement CPQ. It was really, and I was a little bit part of, not both of them completely, but the second one even more, where we started to get to RFQs and really see who are the vendors. But the reason that it failed, and it relates to what Tom also said about the change management, the fact that the company we were not ready for making really this change. And the change meaning that in several main departments, whether it's the sales, whether it's the product, whether it's the finance, must be like a difficult decision that needs to be made in order really to get to the point that we can even answer the who, the what, the why. This was like you asking the same question, you will get several answers from a different people. So it really took time. This is also related to the fact that it's hard because a lot of departments and people and like the entire mindset of the organization need to go through a change in the terms of how we're going to sell, how we're going to really make all we want to apply approval and guidance and what is our product structure and how we are offering our product. The reason it was hard also because it's not Amazon, it's not product you find at Amazon. And this is how why it was a challenge, and this is why also for like more than 10 years it's been running in the same mode, because the product and the solution are complicated, and they involve all kinds of types of component, whether it's software, it's hardware, it's subscription, it's professional services. It was really a challenge. This is why everyone every time like try to keep it aside and say, I will work the same as I do, and it's working. But actually, we came to the point that it was no longer could hold, and the fact that we already had the service in place, and like organization and the management would see the benefit and the dashboard, and we are connected also with Tableau. So it was like they see in it how it's really improved all the service organization. So it was like for sure that we are going ahead for the Revenue Cloud. Yeah.
So an interesting thing that you mentioned is that you tried twice before,
Right.
and you weren't successful. And I think that this is a really important thing for our audience to pay attention to, because when Tom and I are talking to a lot of our prospects and we make this emphasis around change management, the readiness, like how you really get ready for one of these projects, the metric is right now is that first-time CPQ implementations have a 60% fail rate because they're hard. They're really hard. Again, the effort is worth the outcome and the output. But they are genuinely really hard. And if your business just isn't ready to embrace the change, there's no way that it can be successful. And so taking some of those lessons learned, right? I know you mentioned a couple of things like change management, but fundamentally, what do you think changed the attitude of the business now on your third time? Because you will be successful on this one.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Or I will not be here next year.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think was the difference? Like,
okay, so really, at first it was a combination of several things. The spin from Variant was one of them. Really, we became really independent. And the mindset, as I said, of the organization change.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a new people arrived. And it's important to say because in Cognite, there's a lot of the employees are working like I'm working like over almost 15 years. There are a lot of like me. Okay, I'm not special in that terms, and it was one of the reasons of their strict way that they work and didn't want to hear anything. Still, after we separated, really a new manager arrived, but not also manager. Also people from, I could say, for example, our product strategy group. We have, a new really resource joined, and it really make a change because like the fact that now product strategy understand they need to make an order and in our catalog, in our BOM, in our offering, and how we want to sell, and what is the right way to sell, made it really the change, the revolution it was really a revolution to what we used to. So the product strategy group work with each of the product group, with sales people, with finance, and drill down like one by one. It's not that we completed our entire product line and we are ready to implement it all. But with two of our product line, there was a massive work of preparation, what needs to be changed, which means like a real structure of BOM of what we want to sell, what are our product rules, what are our pricing rules that we need to apply, what finance need, what their sales guidelines that they need to address and achieve. And this is done by a certain approval. And we could do it due to the fact that we have now approval within the system and not just by emails. And again, since I mentioned the complexity of the offering, it comes to the fact that also the approval and the finance approval was also needs to be by the segments of the deals, of the payment terms, whether it's subscription, then give this discount. Whether, I mean, it's really it was impossible to gain it without Salesforce, without the Revenue Cloud, and the finance people also. Part of, again, the independent and the fact that we are now public, and it was like must-have.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. All right, so I think we've touched on this a little bit, but during the implementation cycle, we have really been focusing heavily on change management, given that we knew that like third time's the charm, right? So working with Uptima, we made an agreement with you all that we had to be steadfast. And Tom talked about some of those best practices around change management. So the internal change, like product versus strategy, how we're making our go-to-market strategy around those products, leveraging the right toolkit. And I think one of the things that you fundamentally did differently this time as well is that you elected to use logic.io
right.
front
this
end.
Was the, I mentioned really until now the business part of the fact that we are going to succeed, but the other part was really more to the platform, the technical, the implementation, and of course, one of the things, it was working with Uptima and Logic.io. Actually, Uptima, you are the one that came with the with Logic, with the recommendation of Logic.io after we talked for a lot of meeting and hours of discussion about our portfolio and complexity and so on, and really you recommend the Logic.io. So we started the project with Uptima and Logic.io, and Uptima recommend also for approach to implement it, so we will not fail again. Yep. They call it start with the MVP. So this is why also I mentioned we started with the two of our product lines. We wanted to be able to achieve in like a short time to go live with something and to show really the organization and everyone that it's working, we are getting the most advantage out of it. And scoping it for like MVP, like Uptima came with this recommendation. I think it was, again, one of the main reasons why we could really be successful this time.
Yeah. So when we focus on an MVP model, we're focusing on high velocity to putting something into production that is meaningful to the organization, but very adoptable. So usually what we're doing is we're packaging something that's just a little bit smaller to roll out and then focusing on enhancements in the following phases. But certainly, you know, when we work with organizations who have your guys' history, in that, you know, we've tried a couple of times, didn't quite work out. We want to make sure that what we're bringing to market, and this is why working with the right partner is also very important, because we can help tailor a program for your organization. But also, you know, in that metric, one thing I want to make sure I'm abundantly clear on, and the metric of 60% of Revenue Cloud implementations do fail, at Uptima 0% of them fail. Like, I'll just make that very clear. We've been doing this all day, every single day for 15 years, so we don't fail. Like, we would rather die than fail. So I'll just put that out there. Yeah.
Well, we pull that up. So, you know, there's failed implementations that never go live, and that's generally because of a lack of alignment on within the customer and the consultant, right? There's a lack of understanding about what the requirements are and what needs to be delivered. There are also a lot of projects, though, where CPQ goes live and people are dissatisfied. Again, not from Uptima. Everybody's always super happy with my projects. But mainly, you know, we don't just do implementations. We step in a lot where clients are saying, you know, I've had this for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and I'm really not happy with the performance. And there are two main things that we see there. The first is over customization of the tool. So that really clearly indicates like a lack of change management, and that there weren't really, you know, discussions here to understand like design, right? We go through a design phase when we do these projects. That is not a time for us to just write down your requirements, right? Our CEO always says we are tour guides, not taxi drivers, and that's, you know, it's really true, right? We are here to show you the tool and help align with what you have just purchased, right? The second thing I see a lot is a complete lack of documentation coming out of the implementation. So if you are looking to do a Revenue Cloud implementation, I really hope you go with Uptima. If you are talking to other partners, hammer them on the documentation that they're going to turn over to you. It blows my mind that I will step into clients with very complex implementations and I'll say, you know, why was this decision made? Or, you know, why are we not kind of using this native out of the box functionality? And they'll say, we don't know. This is just what we were given. This is what was delivered, and we don't really know why these decisions were made. So, you know, again, I really hope you do go with Uptima if you're looking to do an implementation, but that documentation is very, very important.
And that's true as well, because when a lot of people hear the words change management, they think about the human change of it. But it's not. There's governance in technical change management as well, right? So we harmonize both the business users, the business beneficiaries, but we're also enabling best practice in how we roll out change in our tech stack. And having that is not only just important when you're going into enhancement phases, but also if you have attrition in your organization. These things can become very valuable training tools to those who are coming in. All right, so we do need to get wrapped up here shortly, but just before we stop, and my apologies, the last slide is failing us. But I want to just hear from you. So post go live is important because you got to measure performance, right? How much better are we doing today than we were prior to implementation? So what are those outcomes that you're going to be measuring against?
Okay, so first obviously will be the time of generating quote to the customer, which the intention, and also as we see right now, even though we are not live yet, it's supposed to be in January, so it's not that far, but it should be cut down from 1 month to 2 months that can take a quote. Again, this is a huge, it sells like project, our solution. We minimize it to 1 week, and this is not just a sentence or sounds good, this is so this is one thing again, and again, this is again due to the work that has been done with the business, with Uptima, make it very easy to the sales, whether it's automatic packaging that the system know how to recommend and validate, whether it's other rules that apply. And so this is, of course, the main thing that we will going to measure, and we already seen in our when we run the scenario. Other thing, of course, will be getting more value for the customer, which means now when we are selling, we know the customer install base for existing customer. We can tell what the customer bought from us, what we can offer upon the upsells, the extension, and it's there, it's in the system, and we can use it. It's part of a system, nothing that really we need to make it happen. Also for new customer, also when I'm talking about the output, and the customer knows exactly very clear what he buy, what we sold to him. It gives also for Cognite the opportunity to sell more because things are much clearer. Of course, the visibility of the pipeline, of our forecast, of what's going on with this deal, where is it stands now, what's the status of it. It's so really straightforward. It's just unbelievable. And this is true, of course, for later on in the process to gain all the insight of the revenue. And because we break it down also by the fact that we have the pricing and the approval by the streams of the product and the finance look at that way. We have it all. We have it all in the system, within the system, in one place. Of course, I mentioned it when I said about the reduction of time. Part of it, just to mention, it's very important in our organization. Don't know in other places, but until now, the sales are really depend on the product. In each sale, in each each opportunity that comes, it comes to the sales. It goes down to the product. And there's been working with the product because the sales really are not really familiar because it's a little bit complicated. We make it much easier, so there is this user experience is much easier, and they are much more independent and don't need to take the time of the product. It needs to be focused on product. Another thing, of course, is the fact that once we have it in place and we have the Revenue Cloud, we have other functionality and things that we didn't get them yet, but it's there. And this is, of course, when we get to renewal, the automatic renewal, everything will be, with the sales, with the CPQ, and with the service. Like I see it, like really one flow that will flow.
Right, and one of the biggest horsepowers that Salesforce Revenue Cloud brings, especially in a subscription software model or any as a service model. We have customers who are water as a service, irrigation as a service, you name it. But anytime you can be influencing the recurring revenue model, and we'll talk about this more in our Office of the CFO conversation this afternoon, but those types of revenue models that we're empowering on platform, recurring revenue is awesome revenue because it's so incredibly forecastable, right? Our CFOs, our organizations love that forward look of what our revenue is going to be. It allows us to make intelligent decisions around go-to-market strategies, investments we might want to make. So when we're doing Revenue Cloud implementations, it's not just a mechanism of okay, here's your quote faster. I'm quoting to you faster. That's part of it. But there's a whole data model behind it, and there's the generation of revenue that may have not been there previously and intelligently that way, so that we are empowering our users at all levels of the organization. So, Nita, I just want to thank you so much again for making your way to San Francisco from Tel Aviv. That is a very long flight. Godspeed to you this evening. I hope you make it through. Happy to respond to any questions that you guys might have, or if there's anything you want to add to the conversation. If not, you'll see us bopping around the building for the next day. The factory closes up at 12:30 tomorrow, but we are here to chat with you, and I do hope that you continue to come to our other sessions later. Very good. Yes? Hello.
I don't know if it would be Tom or Salesforce. So you mentioned Amazon, so I'm...
Pop the button.
Hello?
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, so I'm in supply chain solutions. So Amazon's our biggest customer.
Okay.
So we build trucks and then warehouses. And so Rev Cloud is relatively new, but help me wrap my head around Rev Cloud from a product roadmap standpoint. So Steel Bricks was something, and then Salesforce CPQ, and then now it's Revenue Cloud. So help me wrap my brain around what it is, and then the question for the young lady that's about to take an 18-hour flight.
Thank you for the young.
Yeah, bless you. The failures, was it Rev Cloud failures, or was it a competitor product failure?
We didn't get even to the platform.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So to answer your question, what is CPQ Revenue Cloud, right? So Revenue Cloud is kind of like an umbrella of different products that we offer, right? So to take it back, right, there was a application called SteelBrick that we bought in 2015. That was Salesforce CPQ, right? Around 2017-ish, we developed another application, which was called Salesforce Billing at the time, right? And that has been integrated into Salesforce CPQ. We sell it under the umbrella of Revenue Cloud. So it is all now pretty much one module, right? When you hear the term Revenue Cloud, you're getting the CPQ functions, which are the configure, price, quote functionality from SteelBrick plus billing. And we also have an additional product that's called subscription management, right? So on the roadmap, if you take a look at that, we've got other products out there that are influencing the roadmap of CPQ, such as subscription management, which is really geared toward customers, high-tech customers that manage lots of subscriptions and need to be able to upgrade, downgrade on the fly, and use that in conjunction with a self-service module, right? So, for example, like if you have a good example is licensed seats, right? You may have gone to a customer portal and said like, all right, I have Salesforce is a good example, right? I have 10 licenses, 20 licenses. I want to upgrade, downgrade, things like that. That's what the subscription management product is for. If you have 20 licenses, 10 licenses, I want to upgrade, downgrade, right, and expose that functionality to my customers for self-service.
And then Tom, you mentioned getting your product from Amazon in 2 days. We can't build these warehouses fast enough. Customers want their product when they hang up the phone.
I would like it between 2 and 4 p.m., please.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Domino's Pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, you know what's really cool though is that is happening. Like I can make an order on Amazon. They're like, "Do you want it today at 3 p.m.?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
30 minutes or less.
Yeah. It's tremendous.
Whatever it is, not just the pepperoni. It's
Yeah. And given
faucet or you
Right.
given the nature of your business, I think it would be fantastic if you took some time to talk to some of our other partners and co-sponsoring the space with us today. Like, yes, so like the likes of Logic and 3Kit. Yes, wonderful.
A
So
really cool demo that involves
Yes.
the configuration
of a
of
truck.
semi trucks downstairs. So
yeah,
I heard someone talk about forklift, and I was like, oh, you had me at
yes, yeah.
trucks.
Yeah.
You had me at 30-minute delivery. Yeah. Yeah, so, and just on that point of the other partners that we have with us in the building today, so the Salesforce platform is an incredibly powerful tool, but it can't boil the ocean. It doesn't do absolutely everything, and that's okay, it doesn't have to. What we see is a lot of these other ISV partners that come up, like Nita is using Logic, which is more of an attribute-based configurator as opposed to a SKU-based configurator. The native C of CPQ is a SKU-based configurator. We've gone more attribute-based, which is a phenomenal fit for people who are in your business, right? Especially when we got like this concept of big bomb kits. Like there's a lot of line items that have to run behind the individual products that we're configuring on a quote. So we partner with the likes of Logic, Propel, Zilliant, and the others that are here to put a lot of horsepower into either configuring, pricing, the general data model. Now we have this necessity for like visualization in configuration, which when you had me at forklift, right? You want to assemble a forklift. It's nice to kind of see how those components come together in real life. But what everything happens is like all roads lead to that order object in Salesforce, right? So now you do have a centralized repository. You don't have to have all of these apps running individually with these heavy integrations. It's all sitting on platform. So I love the innovation that's happening around the Salesforce platform. And what I will also say is that for many of our customers, what we realize is that these Revenue Cloud implementations, like particularly the order object, and Tom can really vouch for this, become in many ways like the heartbeat of your Salesforce org, right? Because it's all of our revenue is now flowing through, like all of that revenue intel, all revenue operations, all of the human behavior and how we interact with revenue. Now we've got all this cool stuff coming with generative AI, and when we create entitlements on the service side out of the stuff that we're selling, how our support teams are now benefiting from all these knowledge bases, which we access through generative AI, just making like that speed. It was my generation, so I'm shamelessly a millennial, but it's my generation that created this impatience in the way that we do things. We don't like standing in line. I don't like waiting for things. I don't like the blue wheel of death, so anything that makes it faster, that's what everybody is doing today. So when we talk about speed and time to market, things like all this entire ecosystem paired now with the concepts of generative AI and how we're starting to see that come true are like really fascinating, very cool. All right, so we do have to exit the space. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Tom.